this lab, we'll deploy an application onto our Tanzu Kubernetes cluster and scale out the TKG cluster. First thing we need to do is using kubectl vSphere login is to log in to the Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. Ensure that we change our active context to be our newly created TKG cluster. Before we run our application, we're going to allow run as root role binding to be enabled on the Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. Using kubectl apply, we'll apply the YAML file to grant privileges for our demo application to run. Next, we've prepared a YAML file to deploy our application onto our TKG cluster. We can inspect this YAML file using the cat command. This deployment will deploy an instance of Nginx onto our TKG cluster and also create a load balance service. We'll apply this YAML file using kubectl apply. We'll monitor the creation of the deployment pod and load balancer service using kubectl get deployments pods services. After a few moments, we'll observe that our deployment is ready, our pod is ready and running, and our load balancer service has been created with an external IP address. We can open up a browser to this external IP address to verify connectivity to the running application. Next, let's scale out the Tanzu Kubernetes cluster worker nodes from 1 to 3. First, we need to switch back to our Supervisor Cluster namespace 01. We have a YAML file prepared, which is identical to the YAML file used to deploy the TKG cluster, with the exception that the number of worker nodes is increased from 1 to 3. We'll apply this YAML file using kubectl apply. And we can monitor the state of the new worker node deployments from the vSphere client. The additional worker nodes will take a couple of minutes to deploy, power on, and join the existing TKG cluster. We can inspect the status again using kubectl get Tanzu Kubernetes clusters and see more detailed information using kubectl describe Tanzu Kubernetes clusters. The cluster has been scaled out successfully when the node status and VM status report a ready status. That concludes this lab.